Welcome back. You're still watching Shape Your Life, the show that aims to teach you everything you need to know about health-related matters. Most athletes have suffered injuries while on the field. Some have even left the sport because of the injuries they suffered. We are joined by biokineticist Lisa Bain, who gave us more insights on sports injuries and the role of a biokineticist. Lisa, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us on Shape Your Life.
Pleasure.
I think my first question is to contextualize your profession and what you do and set the tone for our discussion. What is biokinetics and what does a biokineticist do?
Biokinetics it's deemed to be specialized exercise therapy. So the Biokinetics Association of South Africa, that's their terminology, that we are trained to give prescriptive exercise for a variety of conditions. So whether it's musculoskeletal or chronic illnesses, that kind of thing, that's what we are trained to do. But I believe a lot of our job is to help people re-educate themselves when it comes to movement. So we help them to get out of faulty movement patterns that could be coming from posture. It could be from overtraining, you know, sports related, that kind of thing. But it's helping them increase their body awareness so that they can change the faulty movement patterns, start getting the right muscles to fire at the right time, that kind of thing, so that it's more about prevention.
But you know, when we look at it from a prevention perspective, that's the ideal scenario. But many people that we know suffer from sports injuries. Yes, we know the elite athletes, but also those weekend athletes, you know, that go out there and decide to play football, cricket, or whatever else there may be. In your opinion, what are some of the common sports injuries that you see patients come to you with?
I would say common are rotator cuff in shoulder, hamstrings, and a lot of back injuries. And those would come from the fact that our lifestyle has us sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day. We sit driving to work, we sit in meetings, we sit at work, drive home, and then people are aware that they should be active, they should be doing something. You know, it's constantly pumped that you must be active, you know, sedentary lifestyle is dangerous, so they then come home from sitting for 10 hours and then will go and run 5 or 8 kilometers. And they now have muscle imbalances, flexibility issues, that are now going to predispose them to injuries. So, for example, just sitting like this, your hamstrings are shortened all the time. Your hip flexors are shortened. We get tired, so we start to slump like this. So your core, your TAs, stop working. So the muscles that should be working all the time become inhibited. And then you get, you know, your hamstrings, it's a 2-joint muscles working at the knee and the hip. And it then gets shortened, and now you're going to run 5 or 8 kilometers. They're not in the correct condition that they should be in because of the lifestyle. So it's not that they're doing anything wrong or that they can't run, or you know, often it is overtraining if you do too much too quickly. But most of the time it's the lifestyle factors that are predisposing people to the injuries.
When it comes to injuries, you get different types of injuries. And how do a person know the difference between, you know, if you go gym too hard, delayed onset muscle soreness where the muscles are just a bit stiff, or, you know, the old phrase of, oh, I got lactic acid buildup, I just ran 10 Ks, you know, and they stiff rather, but they think it's an injury versus an actual injury. What are the signs and symptoms for them to differentiate?
So that delayed onset of muscle soreness, or DOMS, so that's what you feel when you feel stiff after exercising. So it's not the burn that's occurring when you're doing the exercise. That is in fact the lactic acid, but that gets taken care of. So it's not the lactic acid later on. That stiffness, that sort of pain in the muscles, so that is DOMS. And that occurs when you've basically overloaded the muscle.
being a movement specialist, I think a movement educator and movement specialist, what role does that play in assisting a person recover from an injury, especially a sports injury like you mentioned, whether it be hamstring or back? And back is so common. And I know it's a strong passion of yours to assist people, to strengthen their backs and alleviate a lot of the back pain. What are some of the advices you would give someone when it comes to moving the body in the right way to prevent the injury and to recover from it?
First of all, people often ask, what is the difference between physiotherapy and biokinetics? So say someone has injured themselves quite badly, they would need to see a physio for that acute phase. The physio will help them get back their initial range of movement and control the pain. Then, normally what will occur afterwards is that they need to be educated in how to strengthen that part of the body correctly, but also we need to find the root of the problem. So that's where biokineticists will look at the whole biokinetic chain. So often if someone comes and they've got a sore knee, it's not the knee that is the problem. There is either an imbalance often coming from the pelvis, or you always look above or below. So it's either coming from the feet and the ankles, or it's coming from the pelvis, and the knee just happens to be the weak link in the chain. And that's also where a lot of movement occurs, so that's where it will manifest. So I'm not saying it's always the case, but very often it is. So we have to look at the person and how they move and what they do as a whole. You have to take the whole thing into account.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that. And I think it'll mitigate a lot of potential injuries that people will suffer from. Thank you for your time, and we'll let you get back to all your equipment here for your clients, but definitely so. I think the pearls of wisdom shared is definitely appreciated by the viewers and by myself.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
We spend time with clinical dietitian Tabitha Hume to learn more about the importance of nutrition for athletes. Tabitha, thank you so much for joining us on Shape Your Life.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's fun.
Now, a rare conversation that people have is the relation of nutrition and food when it comes to sports injuries. So the first question would be, is there one?
Yes, there certainly is. In fact, it's quite interesting you bring that up, because I've had quite a few patients recently who have come and said, I keep getting sick. I have upper respiratory tract infections, so sinus and colds, and I also keep getting injured. Now, what is it? I'm having tons and tons of protein, Tabitha. I'm trying to do everything I can. I'm pushing myself, and yet I keep getting these injuries, torn and inflamed, etc. And then I take their dietary history and I realize how little carbohydrate they're having. Because in the gyms today, it seems to be very, very fashionable for everyone to be saying carbs must be bad, carbs are fattening, and have lots more protein. Now, the problem with that is you can have tons and tons of protein in your diet, but unless you've got enough carbohydrates to actually utilize the proteins and to start repairing muscle and tissue, it's not going to work. So you can have a whole lot of proteins floating around in your blood from 6 eggs and 2 chicken breasts, but unless you've got sufficient carbohydrates, it's never going to actually do the repairing. So this can be a problem. It's basically leaving people weaker than they should be. Then they push themselves really hard in the knowledge that they've got lots and lots of protein in their diet and they're supposed to feel strong, and then they wonder why the weakness is leading to damage. So, yeah.
But that's interesting to know, because it's about bringing in a balance of the right carbohydrates, and of course the proteins. And from an injury prevention perspective, it's mind-boggling. Yeah. Because it's not what people think is the right information. Yes. So when we're looking at the carbohydrates and the protein, if someone is really pushing themselves in a sport, especially the weekend sports warriors, those that are working in the weekend, and the weekend they're running their races, they're hitting the soccer fields, tennis courts. But the Monday, I pulled this, I tore this. From that perspective, what would your advice be to them from a nutrition perspective?
Very good. What you're looking at is pre-training or pre-event nutrition, during event nutrition, and post-event nutrition. You've actually got to look at all three. So it's not really, oh, what am I going to be eating just in the morning before? We want to look at, yes, eating slow-release carbohydrates and what we call a mixed meal. up until the time of the event or the training. Then immediately before the event or the training, we need to have a decent amount of carbohydrate in there, and a little bit of protein and a little bit of fats. And you want the mix so that it can deliver energy all the way through. So a lot of people say, but I don't want to eat just before I train or before I do my event, because then I'm going to have problems. And this is why you need to eat the way that you would for the event, all the way up until the actual event. So you need to keep things the same. And you develop a stomach fitness, so you no longer get actual tight stomach and getting stitches and stuff. Your body is actually able to cope with a tummy that's filled with food. So obviously you're not talking about a massive lasagna with salads, but you are talking about maybe a smoothie that has a bit of fruit and has a little bit of protein in it. You don't need a protein powder, you just need something very simple, preferably plant-based. But then in there you need to also put some carbohydrate. So there are lots of really nice breakfast cereals you can smooth into there as well. So have something like that. So it's not a huge bulk, but you've got a nice mixed meal. And then during the event, you want to obviously hydrate with lots and lots of water so that there's a constant stream of hydration. But at the same time, you want to make sure that there's a constant stream of carbohydrates as well. And then, of course, you look at post-event. This is what we call the recovery period. And you need to ingest a recovery drink or a recovery meal within 20 minutes of finishing your event.
What about junk food? Because, you know, people love their junk food, and junk food is known to cause an inflammation response and could risk potential injury.
I'm very impressed. Absolutely right. And I love the fact that you brought that up. Junk food does cause an inflammatory response, and inflammation is something that we're beginning to talk about a hang of a lot, because the inflammatory response is actually one of the main reasons we get overweight, we get high blood pressure, we get cardiovascular problems, we get injuries, etc. So we try and minimize inflammation as much as possible. So we look at the things that actually initiate inflammation. One of them is having a lower blood sugar level. So again, not having enough carbohydrates regularly enough and the right ones. Second to that, inflammatory responses come when we've got a huge amount of the wrong fats, so largely animal fats, and also when we've got too much protein, specifically animal protein. And you'll find that a lot of times people will have fried chicken and a bit of chips or something like that. The reason that's such a problem is because it's a massive amount of animal protein, which we do not need. It's a huge load on the kidneys. But you're having a huge amount of that animal protein. Animal proteins contain a specific amino acid called L-carnitine. L-carnitine used to be very fashionable to have because it was supposed to build muscle. Now, unfortunately, we realize not at all. And second to that, we now realize that that is a huge influencer of producing something in the gut called TMAO, which is one of the most inflammatory products we know within the body. So in fact, people that think, oh, I'm having lots of this clever stuff, I'm obviously building muscle and repairing. Unfortunately, it's creating even more of an inflammatory response. So yes, you'll be slightly more prone to injury and not as good at repairing and getting your body back to strength again afterwards. Yeah.
For so much valuable information, we're going to sit back and digest it.
There's always a lot to say.
Thank you for your time. I think it is so insightful. I think this is a precursor to many more discussions, and your knowledge is palatable, and for bringing it down so that each and every one of us can understand. I mean, you've written so many books as well, on your website there's so much information, and thank you for being a custodian thereof for us.
Good, it's only a pleasure. I love what I do, so I'm very glad that I'm able to help people. So thank you for the interview.
In our next insert, we had an interesting conversation with a young man who lost his leg at the age of 3 in a car accident. But that didn't stop him from being best on the athletics field. Junior Mavuso, thank you so much for joining us in Shape Your Life.
It's a very good pleasure to be here.
Now, you are a disabled athlete, all right? Or athlete living with a disability. What happened and what actually made you now become this a person living with a disability?
Well, it's all started like back in the day when in 1998, I was actually 3 years old when I had my accident with my dad.
Now, living with a disability, you know, your leg was amputated below the knee. Growing up, how was the reaction of the community?
You know, growing up, it's very difficult because, you know, some things you are limited in doing, so you can't always do whatever all your friends are doing, but then you can always try and be part of the community and friends, and try to do whatever possible that you can. And I grew up with a lot of friends that understood my disability, so I think it was really a privilege of mine to have friends like those that I have.
And were you always an athlete?
I wasn't always an athlete, but then I always I enjoyed doing my sports like soccer. But basically in the locations we always grew up playing soccer, so it was always a thing of, okay, now people play soccer, and I always used to, you know, I'll be the first person to jump, like, yeah, let's go play soccer, man.
Now, you found Jumping Kids, or did they find you? And what is Jumping Kids, and how did they help you?
Jumping Kids actually found me. Well, when I actually started a school in 2003. It was a school, Mirror Brand School in Brakpan, which was a school for disabled people, and they used to help us do sports. So usually, like every year, they used to select a few kids in school which are capable of doing sports, and we used to go around, do sports and everything like that. And in 2010, Jumpy Kids actually saw potential in me, and then they offered to sponsor me with new prosthetics, which would help me with my athletics.
Now, with training, you finish school, all right, and you train, I'm sure, a lot, because, you know, there's a lot of things of Paralympics coming up, but also that there's national challenges and competitions.
Every chance I get, I make sure that I do my normal routines of training, and hopefully Paralympics is shooting, and I'm actually doing in long jump. I do 100 meters, I do 200 meters, and I do javelin.
Javelin as well?
Javelin as well.
So you're a jack of all trades in athletics?
Yes, I'm a jack of all trades.
Now, when you broke the South African record for long jump, I think the T44 category?
Yes.
How did you feel?
You know, at first it was unbelievable. You know, there's like a lot of people in your one category, and then you're jumping and everything like that. And as soon as you hear that, you know, you broke an SA record, you'll be like, wow, it's not something it's something that you would want to do, but then it's something that, you know, with a lot of people there, it's kind of like hard, and you just have to do your best and do it. And it was phenomenal. Like, it was unbelievable.
What is your next goal when it comes to your athletics career?
Paralympics is something I'm looking forward to, but you know, whatever happens, and I'm looking at a great future in my athletics, and I hope for the best in everything, basically.
What is your final word to the viewers out there who are living with a disability, and for those who are not? Because you are a shining example that no matter what life has thrown at you, you stand up and you run as fast as you can and break a few records on the way.
You know, for those who are living with disabilities, all I can say is don't let your disability get the better out of you. Stand up, do whatever you can, make sure that you show everyone that, you know what, living with a disability doesn't mean you are limited to anything. Just go out there and show that, do your best, and do whatever is possible that you can do.
And live life to the best.
Live life to the best.
Thank you so much for your time, my brother. I know you're going to do some training a bit later on.
Yes, I am.
And I wish you the best of luck. You know, I know there's a lot happening in the Paralympics, but beyond that too. And welcome to the world of young adulthood, where you have to balance the passion of athletics and the need to work.
Thank you very much. I'm trying my best to balance everything and make sure that I prosper in everything I do.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on Shape Your Life.
Thank you very much.
To all athletes, sports people, and even those weekend warriors, you need to prevent injuries. But if you do suffer from one, be proactive in looking after your body. And don't forget that you can keep in touch with us by sending an email to shapeyourlife@ann7.com with all your health-related queries or topics that you would like seeing being discussed on the show. From me, Ronald Advigi, and the Shape Your Life team, see you next week.